Then we can move ahead with the first presentation on a specific challenge. The challenge is human-centric generative AI made in Europe, and our presenter is Miguel Angel Rubio Escudero from DigiConnect. Miguel.
Thank you, Roman. First, apologies for the virtual background. It seems that I was not able to place it properly. I will start sharing the slides, and I would like to confirm that you are able to see, the slides properly. So do you
Yes, we
see
see
the,
it. We see
do
it
you see?
properly.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you very much. So, well, good morning to all. My name is Miguel Rubio. I'm a policy officer at the unit in DG Connect that concerns robotics and artificial intelligence. And today I'm going to give a brief presentation on the challenge human-centric generative AI made in Europe. The outline of the presentation, I will start with a brief background on generative AI. I will try to do it very brief. Then I will describe also briefly other European Commission initiatives, and then I will explain in detail the accelerator challenge that is the topic of this presentation. Okay, first thing, generative AI is a new wave of artificial intelligence models that have shown very high capabilities. These models have shown to have an immense potential, and they are expected to revolutionize multiple sectors, as we have seen in the media every day. It has been recognized that the mastery of this technology is of strategic importance for Europe, because we want to reduce the dependency of regarding this technology on non-European companies, and we want to ensure digital sovereignty. Another thing that the European Commission has also recognized is that despite their advantages, generative AI models have capabilities and risks that still need to be uncovered. A little brief history, just to place the field in context. GPT-3 that was released in June 2020, around 3 years and a half ago, is the first widely known general purpose model, and it represents the emergence of a new wave of technologies. One thing that is important is that although artificial intelligence has a very long history since the 1950s, the last 3 years and a half represents a milestone, a change in the capabilities and risk of this technology. Right now, there are a wide variety of models. I believe that all people present in this presentation are aware of the different models presented by Google, OpenAI, Meta, in a lot of different fields: text, image, audio, or video, or even in some cases, genomic sequences and protein sequences. It is important to be aware that the field is much wider. We have right now multiple actors within Europe and outside Europe developing multimodal foundation models that in other fields. Some of the most relevant ones and most promising ones are robotics, also autonomous driving. In the last half a year, weather forecast has become a very interesting topic regarding foundation models, and there are multiple other fields that are expected to be impacted by this kind of models. So it's not only video, audio, and text. There is a lot of different fields of applications that will be a fertile ground for generative AI. To understand a little bit how we see the field from a startup perspective, we would like to share this generative AI value chain that was presented by McKinsey and Company. One important caveat is this does not represent an official posture by the European Commission, and we are aware that the field is changing very, very fast. So what is kind of valid now might not be valid in a year. But right now, we see that the main steps of the generative AI value chains are first the cloud platforms, the companies providing the access to the computer hardware. Then you have foundation models that are companies developing core models on which generative AI applications can be built. Then there are a set of companies working on infrastructure, model hubs and MLOps, providing tools for companies that are building foundation models to be able to use them properly. And then the development of generative AI applications based on those foundation models. These are more or less the main steps of the generative AI value chain. Regarding generative AI business models, again, this field is changing very, very fast. This is just a snapshot that represents some of the main business models that we have seen in the last year, but this might change very fast in the near future. Again, we have companies that are focusing on developing end-to-end apps. They develop the foundation models, they develop the generative AI apps, and the end-user facing applications. Examples of these kind of companies is, for example, Midjourney. Another type of business models is what is called closed-source foundation models, where companies develop foundation models that are exposed to the market via APIs, and then other companies develop those generative AI applications based on those APIs. The best well-known example of such approach is GPT-3 with OpenAI, the famous, GPT, in this case, GPT-4 and ChatGPT. And the third approach is, let's say, open source foundation models, where a company develops a foundation model, makes it available to different actors in the market through model hubs, where users can access those models, fine-tune them, and develop generative AI applications based on those open foundation models. Examples of companies following this kind of approach is Stable Diffusion, and examples of model hubs, probably the best well-known is Hugging Face. Again, this is just a snapshot. New business models might appear in the near future. This is not just a kind of written in stone, but a kind of way to describe the situation as we see it right now. Before proceeding to describe the accelerator challenge, I would like to take a few minutes to describe other European Commission initiatives, because the European Commission has taken a very proactive approach regarding generative AI and foundation models, and we have a wide set of instruments and initiatives regarding to this topic that might be of interest for some of the people attending this presentation. The global AI framework for generative AI right now is based on 3 pillars. We are focusing on guardrails, making sure that the models respect European values, governance according to international relations, and promoting innovation regarding foundation models. All these are encompassed by the AI Act that, as you probably know, has been agreed politically but not yet approved at the end of the last year. We have several initiatives to support innovation, going from the Horizon Europe, that is most focusing in research, to Digital Europe, that is most focused on deployment these technologies on the market, to the AIC accelerator, that is the topic of today's presentation. On the Horizon Europe, I will just make a brief comment. This is focused mostly on developing new capabilities, new models. This is mostly focused on research. We are right now trying to develop initiatives regarding the development of new foundation models that are multimodal and have additional capabilities. And also we are trying to develop a call that on focusing on that, making these models explainable and robust, making them transparent and reliable. These calls will be published in the near future, but they have not yet been published or approved. So just these are kind of templates for the future. The Digital Europe calls have already been approved and they have been published. We have two of them. One is called the Alliance for Language Technologies. This is the idea to develop a platform that will support startups working on language foundation models and support and fostering the development on language generative AI applications. And another call that might be of interest is making available a high-performance open-source European foundation model for fine-tuning. We are making a call for startups and actors within Europe that are interested in working in developing an open-source foundation models that will be multilingual. Another topic that I would like to touch very briefly, because it's quite related to the topic of the Accelerator Challenge, is that at the end of 2023, the European Commission announced a new initiative that is called the EU AI Startup Initiative that will support startups working on the field of large AI models, generative AI. This initiative has three pillars. One is the access to compute, another one is the financial instruments, and the third one is the large AI challenge. On the access to compute, I would just like to mention that the European Commission is working very, very intensely to make the EuroHPC supercomputers, that are some of the most powerful supercomputers in the world, available for startups. There are several initiatives that I'm not going to describe now in detail because due to lack of time, but those startups working on generative AI and foundation models should be aware that the supercomputers located in Europe, that, as I will repeat, are some of the most powerful supercomputers in the world, are going to be available for startups for them to use and develop foundation models and generative AI applications. Another initiative that I believe can be interesting for startups is the Large AI Grant Challenge, where the European Commission, in collaboration with AI Boost, has presented a challenge to develop language foundation models. The challenge is still open. It will be open till the 13th of February, if I'm not mistaken, although I would recommend to check it. There will be 4 winners selected, and those 4 winners will receive a significant amount of GPU hours to develop their foundation models, and also some cash, some money to support the development of the model. But the most important part is the significant amount of computing resources, up to 2 million GPU hours for the development of the model. This is focused only for European startups. And for sure, if you are working on foundation models, or you are working on language foundation models, including models working with code generation or DNA models, you should take a look, because it is a very interesting proposal and a very interesting opportunity. And with this, I would like to start now focusing on the human-centric generative AI made in Europe, an accelerator challenge by the European Innovation Council. Well, the scope is basically, the aim of this challenge is to support and foster the European approach to artificial intelligence. I mean, dealing with aspects that are very relevant for European values, like transparency or lack of trust. We believe that the European landscape, although it is right now it's not very large, has the potential to develop very intensely to support the development of the next generation of models, of artificial intelligence models, and that would support Europe's sovereignty. In the specific objectives is that we want to support the development of foundation language and multimodal frontier models. And that with that we mean models that are at the cutting edge. I would like to emphasize that this is not just focused on language models that are the most well-known right now, but also multimodal frontier models dealing with weather forecasts, dealing with robotics, dealing with autonomous driving, or any other field where this kind of frontier models have been used. For example, material science, there have been some interesting developments in the last months. We are also looking for models that maybe are not at the very cutting edge, that are not considered frontier models, but show very highly promising performance in very specific domains. This could cover a wide variety of approaches. For example, models that are small enough to be run on mobile devices would fall under this specification. Also, models that are able to work almost in real time. Right now, most generative AI models have some latency. Models that show the capabilities of working in almost real time would also fall under this approach. And also models that are show a strong performance in some minority languages of the European Commission, the European Union, sorry. The expected outcomes is that we expect that this call will reinforce the ecosystem for the development of foundation models along the lines of European values and following the trustworthy and ethical principles of the AI Act that, I have to remind you, has not yet been approved. I mean, it has been agreed, but it has not been approved, so we still don't have the proper AI Act. In the mid and long term, we expect that this call, together with the other European Commission initiatives, will reduce the dependencies that right now Europe has regarding the field of generative AI and large artificial intelligence models, and will support companies that will be able to leverage the advances in this technology. Targeted applicants, I mean, here I would like to emphasize that first, we are primarily focusing on SMEs developing models themselves, I mean, developing foundation models. According to the different business models that I described before, or other business models that are developing in the future, or that these startups might develop themselves. But we are not only focusing on those SMEs developing the foundation models, we are also focusing on SMEs that are providing the innovative infrastructure, tools, and support that is required to develop and apply this kind of generative AI solutions. I mean, we are thinking here about SMEs working on developing of coding frameworks, developing platforms for deployment of foundation models, all the ecosystem around foundation models that has been developed in the last few years and that we expect to continue developing in the near future. It is very important to highlight that this call is focused on European companies that are developing generative AI models and foundation models along the lines of European values. I mean, that's every company working in Europe will have to respect the AI Act, but also we expect companies working in this field to develop trustworthy and human-centric generative AI models. The specific conditions, as Anne-Marie presented at the beginning, this is one of the accelerator challenges where applicants must provide information to prove that the beneficiary is not directly or indirectly controlled by a non-associated third country or a legal entity established in a non-associated third country. As Anne-Marie presented the detail further there, and I would just provide the indicative budget that right now is 50 million euros. And with this, I would like to thank you for attending this presentation, and now I'm available for providing any replies to your questions or comments.
Thank you, Miguel. To the questions, Johannes, do we have something on?
There are no challenge-specific questions as of right now, so we kindly encourage you to ask your questions on the challenges presented, but there are a few more regarding the application procedure and I think it might help to touch upon them. So, for example, there is the question if a company already has an investor, how this investor are they going to play a role in the evaluation procedure?
I think it is for me their role. So investors are authorized to participate in the interviews as a representative of the company. So this is the role they're going to play in the interviews. So as you might know, you're allowed, should your company qualify for the interview round, you can bring 3 representatives who have to be directly employed by the company, who have a type of similar connection to the company, and also one investor. So investors can actually be part of the interview. So I think this answered the question.
Yes, and then there was a question, it's also up there on the challenge call, also for you, Giovanni. On the challenge call budget, I think there are some clarifications that would be good if you could make them.
Yeah, so there was a question on not all the budget was spent for the challenges. That was a good question. So first of all, one important clarification. We will have an interview week ongoing in 2 weeks, so starting on the 29th of January. This is still part of the work program 2023. So it's the interview week for the cutoff of November 2023. Therefore, there's still budget which can be consumed. And there is also flexibility of the budget. So eventually budget not spent in the challenges can be spent in for the open. I think there was also a question on the number of application in the challenges, or this is maybe, I don't know, my best answer would be that perhaps sometimes I maybe involve the program managers in this. Some companies are a bit risk adverse and prefer to apply in the open even if they might fit a challenge to avoid any risk that, for instance, their proposal is not considered relevant for the challenges. So that could be an explanation. It's probably a very simple one. I don't know if, I mean, the program managers know the technological fields much better than I do. So perhaps they can complement on that.
Yes, and I would also like to say that in the last cutoff, there are many more proposals than in the first 2 cutoffs. So it is a high possibility that in the end, the total funding will be spent. But we will know that in 2 weeks' time and could give a definite answer on that. So, Johannes, I did see 2 questions on AI for Miguel. The first one is, what type of validation is expected as starting point?
Well, what type of validation? I don't understand very well the question. I mean, it depends. I mean, I will understand that the validation is referring to the foundation model because that would make sense. That will depend on the type of business model. If the startup is focusing on a kind of end-to-end application, obviously the validation of the model will be the validation of the app. If the model, for example, is following an open source business model, then the validation will have to be following the standard benchmarks that right now are being applied to the different fields. Right now, for example, benchmarks for language models are quite different from benchmarks for virtual models. So it will depend a little bit on both the business model and the field of application. In general, I would say that the basic validation is that the foundation model should be able to provide some general capabilities referring the field of work. I mean, validation is a diffuse term, unless there is some more specific description of the term, I would keep there. And
Okay.
this, The second is define. Well, I have two questions on the chat. The first one is define the phrase European value-driven AI. Well, these are artificial intelligence models that follow the values, European values that we have presented in different fields. Usually we are focusing on trustworthiness. That means that models should be transparent, should be auditable, and should be reliable and robust. For example, resistant to adversarial attacks. Also, we are looking for models that are human-centric, that place people and European citizens at the center. I would say, I mean, there are, depending on the field, because it's not, for example, it's not the same chat bot that deals with the students that weather forecasting generative AI model. Depending on the field, you can apply more or less restrictions. I would suggest that right now, the agreed but not yet approved AI Act is a good description of the values that the European Commission and European Union expects from generative AI models. The second one, okay, and the second one is generative AI business models. Well, this, I mean, that's the only my only aim with that is to present some ways that startups working with generative AI and working more specifically with foundation models have developed ways to monetize those models. I mean, this is a very fast moving field. It's less than 4 years old and it's changing very fast, especially at the market level. This is, I mean, I don't want to restrict any kind of business models. I just wanted to show some of the kind of business models or some of the ways that startups are being able to monetize foundation models.
Thank you, Miguel. There's also another question in the Slido. We have developed an application for usage of a large language model combined with other modalities in a therapeutic setup. Would it be a match for the call?
The devil is in the details. I mean, the thing is, we are focusing on foundation models that are, and basically those are models that are contained in a large data sets with generated approaches. This, the application that has been described might fall if you are kind of developing a multimodal foundation models that use as a base language foundation model, but then you are adding modalities in a general way with general capabilities. If what you are doing is taking a large language foundation models and fine-tune it for specific applications, that would not fall under the scopes. I mean, here the question is exactly what are you doing with the model to, and how, and if the final foundation model is general enough and shows general capabilities.
Thank you. And then SMEs using existing models to pilot, demonstrate their business capabilities, do they qualify for the AI Accelerator Challenge, or do they need to have their own model?
They need to have in their business model the goal of developing their own model. I mean, developing generative AI applications based on existing models with using fine-tuning or using just developing generative AI apps would fall outside the scope of this accelerator challenge as it was designed. Again, the devil is in the details, because if you, for example, you take Llama and you say, okay, I'm going to use Llama to generate an tourist app, that would fall outside the scope. If, for example, you are using Llama to, together with other modalities to create a new multimodal model, that might fall under the scope. In this kind of questions that are borderline, the details of what actually the company is doing is very relevant.
And how about a novel transitional technology that may be out of date or obsolete?
We are focusing the call is technology agnostic. If I remember well, we don't mention any specific technology in any place in the call, but the important thing is we are focusing on capabilities. Foundation models are models that are trained on a wide variety of data and show general purpose capabilities. If the legacy technology is able to show that general purpose capability, in principle, that would fall under the call. Right now, I am not aware of such technology, but I might have missed them for sure. But then the idea is we are not focusing so much on the technology, but on the general purpose capabilities. And we have right now in the market a wide variety of models that show that general purpose capabilities.
Okay, thank you. Are the models expected to work mainly in English, or could they focus in another EU language?
I would say that models that focus on other EU languages would have, especially if they show high capabilities, would be an added value for sure. I mean, we are trying to foster development of generative AI models that work with the European languages.
Thank you. If an AI startup has no minimum viable product ready, is it considered an eligible project? If not all the peculiar features are ready to be shown in a minimum viable product?
That is a question that I believe falls more under the experts assessing the proposal. I would, right now from here, without having further information, I would say that it will depend a lot in whether the proposal is credible in the possibility for achieving that technological goal. I mean, depends. If you don't have a viable product, but you have the team, you have the resources, and you have a clear technological plan that could be credible. If you lack those aspects and you don't have a product, then that would lack credibility. I mean, that depends a little on the proposal and the elements that are supporting the proposal.
Yeah, I would like to refer this question also to Giovanni, because it has very much to do with the expected TRL levels that we have in accelerator. So Giovanna, maybe you can provide your general perspective on this.
Yeah, so there is an evaluation question that refers to TRL5 tested in relevant environment. So I will say it's up then to the experts if to assess whether this, let's say, TRL level has been achieved or not. Will be checked in the proposal. It will be evaluated, and then yes, the expert can eventually. It's part of the evaluation. It's one of the questions under excellence. So yeah.
Thank you, Giovanni. And I think the last question is also to you. Can applicants submit to both open call and challenges at the same time?
No. It's mutually exclusive. It's a concurrent submission. You can present one single proposal at a time. So you have to choose whether you will run for the. I mean, if you participate in both, probably the risk is that you will be excluded from both because it is a concurrent submission. No, you cannot. One single pick, so identification number for a proposal at the time. So.
Okay, thank you.